Okay, good morning. Now, statement 17, 17, 18, 19. 18 and 19 elaborates on 17, and of course 17 is finally kind of coming to the culmination in some ways of the last few statements. And the last few statements, in a way you could say, is getting us closer and closer to what will be said, what is said, what is expressed in statement 17. Still, you should footnote, remember that Kyobpa Rinpoche didn't sit down and compose these statements. These are Vajra statements. These are profound statements that his attendant and nephew, Chengna Sherab Chungne, remembered his uncle teaching. So that after his uncle passed away, one of the first things Chengna Sherab Chungne did was, of course, he went into retreat. So this is a very common theme in the history of the early Kagyupa masters. When the Lama passes away, then as soon as all the funeral rituals, which could go on for a while, sometimes a few months, as soon as all those are done, then the serious disciples tend to go into retreat. So Jigten Sumgon did that, when his teacher Pamudrupa passed away. After he finished his responsibilities in terms of the funeral rituals, all of that, then he went into retreat. So likewise, Sherab Chungne followed that example. And while in retreat, one of the things he did, other than working on realizing and deepening the practices and the teachings that he received from his uncle, the other thing was he saw that it was very important to quickly kind of write down these statements that he heard his uncle teaching. So anyway, then he arranged them into these chapters, and we know from early sources that there were several slightly different versions of these statements circulating around, which, to me, it tells us that as important as these statements are, it's important that also we don't treat them like, they're carved in stone, like the 10 Commandments. I think that's a different mindset, when you look at the teachings in that way. Like they are the 10 Commandments, like they are the words of God, where every punctuation, every sentence, is fixed. I think we have a lot of evidence that, this is not how it is, even with the Buddha's own words 2,500 years ago. So, as the four reliances say, do not rely on the words, rely on the meaning. Of course, to arrive at the meaning, necessarily we start with the words. So when it says do not rely on the words, it doesn't mean, throw away the words. Yes, we want to find the words. We want to understand the words. If possible, we also want to see it. Were there different ways these words were used in the beginning? And if there are, we should not be like alarmed or confused, like, oh, why there are two versions, such as like the case of the four dharmas of Gampopa, right? I said the first line, there's an earlier version, then later another version got replaced. We need not be so rigid, and say, well, it's only this and not that. That is the wrong, of this. And sometimes, of course, it could be wrong. Sometimes what they call textual corruptions in the copying, in the transmitting, things could get messed up. But it doesn't mean, because things could get messed up, that then whatever words we have that we know, oh, he definitely said that, then it's only that way or the highway, as they say. No, it's not like that either. Because all those words, even if we have 100% accuracy and certainty that these words was how Jigten Sumgon used these words, we should not be fundamentalist and say, it's only like this and no other way. Because if you look around, you'll see that elsewhere he used other words. So no matter what words are used, all these words should lead us to meaning. What is the meaning? What is the meaning here? So yes, we necessarily start with carefully looking at the words. Then trying to understand, what do these words mean long time ago? Has it changed, Have the meaning of these words changed? So we should try to pay attention to that as well. So what did these words mean back then in that area? Oh, these words are to communicate this. So what is that? What is this that is being communicated? That's the meaning that we should rely on, and not the words. So the 4 reliances. Rely on the meaning, not on the words. Rely on the definitive meaning and not the temporary meaning. That's the second reliance. The third, actually. The first reliance is actually rely on the teachings, on the words, and don't rely on the person, the personalities, the human teachers that you necessarily have to rely on at the beginning, especially. In the end, many teachings talk about how we should view our human teachers, how we should relate to them, how we should treat them. Many details of that sort. But even that, at the end of the day, we should know it's not the person, it's not the personality that we rely on, but it's what they teach. Then in terms of what they teach, it's not the words even, it's the meaning. Then in terms of the meaning, it's not the temporary meaning, but the final meaning. Then with regards to that final meaning, at first it's just our intellectual capacity, using our intellect to understand this final meaning. But this intellect is to be replaced finally, by the wisdom that arises when we engage this meaning. So these are the 4 reliances. And so anyway, coming back here, 617 is a very profound statement here. So what does 617 say? In a way you could say we've been led by the last few statements to this, so that now it should not be surprising. So it says, if emptiness is realized, or when emptiness is realized, that itself, that realization of emptiness will appear, will arise as cause and result. It's a little poetic in a way. It's not like language used in like a technical manual, how to assemble a car. It's not direct like that. It's still a little poetic. So it says, if emptiness is realized, when emptiness is realized, that itself arises as cause and result. That itself arises as cause and result. So just to show, there is a slightly different wording sometimes that is used. So a slightly different wording. If emptiness is realized, emptiness occurs as cause and result. If you have the physical book, page 56 contains a translation of Vajra statements that sometimes one or two words in the statement is different. And that helps us, again, to get better understanding of what that statement, right? So the words are different sometimes. So therefore, don't rely on the words, but on the basis of the different words, we can kind of get closer to what is the meaning of this Vajra statement. So like the Vajra statement, the one that, Khenpo Kunpal will comment, it says, if emptiness is realized, that itself arises as cause and result. And then you say, what is that? Is that referring to the realization? Or is that itself, right? Is that itself referring to the realization or to the emptiness? From the slightly differently worded Vajra statement found on page 56, we know that it's referring to emptiness, because there it says, if emptiness is realized, when emptiness is realized, that emptiness occurs, is seen as cause and result, karmic causality. Just to point out, look at that section on page 56. The ordering of the statements even is slightly different. So 613, 615, 616, then 614, and 617. Even the order is slightly different. And seems like 618 is missing. So again, don't be so surprised, don't be so alarmed. So anyway, so going back to the version of the Vajra statement that Khenpo Kunpal comments on, then we understand now that it's saying, when emptiness is realized, then that emptiness arises as cause and result. Yes, Judy.
Is this saying the same thing as if emptiness is realized, emptiness is a result of cause and effect?
No.
Okay.
No, it's not saying that.
Okay.
Yeah, emptiness is not a result of cause and effect. Emptiness now arises, occurs as cause and result, karmic causality. Yeah, so now let's look at Khenpo Kunpal's commentary. First of all, I should say, I think Khenpo Kunpal's commentary reflects slightly his own tradition's take his own tradition's interpretation. So he is skirting the full implications of this Vajra statement based on the translation that we have here. I feel that he is not saying exactly what Kyobpa Rinpoche is saying. So yeah, there is different opinions, differences of opinion. But we will also look at, maybe not today, but we'll also look at Dharmakirti's commentary. Then that's closer to what we in the Drikung understand, what Kyobpa Rinpoche is actually saying. So Khenpo Kunpal's commentary, I think, slightly he's not entirely comfortable, I think, with taking this statement literally. But I would say Kyobpa Rinpoche, when he makes this statement, it's quite literal. So let's see. Furthermore, he says, now Khenpo Kunpal's commentary. Furthermore, some postulate that if one sees and realizes the nature of mind, okay, again, like remember that in the Kagyu Mahamudra, in the Dakpo Kagyu Mahamudra training, seeing the nature of mind doesn't mean becoming Buddha, like Buddha Shakyamuni became Buddha under the Bodhi tree. Seeing the nature of mind is an important but preliminary step in one's training in Mahamudra. Then sometimes even, said to be, and even the seeing the nature of mind can have levels, so that the most profound seeing the nature of mind is like the seeing that occurs at the path of seeing when you enter the path of seeing. This is the system of the 5 paths. The path of accumulation, the path of joining, and the path of seeing. And so it's a very profound step, but it is not. Realizing nature of mind, seeing nature of mind, that doesn't mean immediately it's Buddhahood, the way Shakyamuni became Buddha under the Bodhi tree. So some postulate that if one sees and realizes the nature of mind, since virtue does not benefit it, meaning virtue does not improve this nature of mind, and there are texts that say that, Buddha, quotations from the Buddha that says, virtue cannot improve this nature of mind, and non-virtue cannot harm this nature of mind. And since that's the case, then there is no virtue to be practiced and no non-virtue to be abandoned. He says, some people will say this. Or since it is like space, often, right, this nature of mind is said to be like space, right? Then one is beyond cause and result. And that itself is enough. Like once you can realize this, then that is enough. And later, at the time of death, it will be like space inside and space outside gets mixed. Meaning, like once you die, then your mind will become one with this nature of mind. And the clear light of the ground and path get mixed indivisibly, and one does not come back to samsara. One does not put a skull on the head anymore. Meaning, you won't be reborn anymore. In this way, there are many who pretend to be great realized ones and quote many scriptures and reasoning without noticing that they have gotten carried away by the Guhyaka tenet system of no virtue and non-virtue, no cause and result. So this is a reference to, like, in the original Indian context, like when Buddha Shakyamuni was alive, he had to respond to, they say, 6 major kind of spiritual philosophical systems that were current during Buddha Shakyamuni's time in his area. And one of them are what these Gohyakas are. And they are sometimes called the materialists. The nihilist materialists. The footnote says that the Gohyakas are a sub-school of the main group. And these are, ascetics, interestingly. They're not like, ordinary people. They are ascetics, but their system of spirituality or their system of asceticism says, there is no virtue or non-virtue, no cause or result in the ultimate state. And so, but then what's the problem? The problem is, they say, on the relative state, you believe that there are these things, so you create suffering for yourself. You create happiness and suffering, but all these are meaningless. So the spiritual life should consist of not doing anything that is unnatural. Meaning, whatever comes, just do and let go. Now, of course, they're not saying, I'm sure they're not saying, oh, if the thought comes, you should go kill someone, go kill. I don't think they go that far. But basically, they practice a version of best not to do anything, because on the ultimate level, there is nothing. So on the relative level, whatever things that we do will just mess things further up. So just stay neutral. These were the materialist nihilists. Stay neutral, because to exert any effort is futile, pointless. They will say, of course, I'm sure the first thing they say is to exert any effort to take advantage of other people, to harm other people, that will bring misery. But they will also say, but even to exert any effort to help other people, to be kind to other people, even that is futile. So don't do that either. Just remain neutral. Now, here, like certain types of understanding of Mahamudra or Dzogchen sounds very similar to this, Nothing to do. Don't do anything. Just be natural. Don't harm others. If you have afflictive emotions, don't do anything. It's futile, pointless. Because ultimately, there's no virtue or non-virtue. So this first section, this first paragraph, Khenpo Kunpal says, watch out, This is actually wrong view. Then he says, here in the genuine tradition of the practice lineage, another early name of Gyöpa is Drikung. Gyö is the lineage of the Ka, lineage of the oral, of the words of the Buddha. Gyö means the lineage of the words of the Buddha. Ka is the words of the Buddha. Gyö. In fact, you could say that Gyö is just a Tibetan translation of what we call Buddha's teachings. The lineage of the Buddha's teachings. So in the early period, Gyö wasn't exclusively used by just one group. In fact, many Buddhists, in the 10th, 11th century in Tibet, when you ask them, what do you practice? They will say, we practice the Gyö, as in the orally transmitted teachings of the Buddha. It's only later on that this term became so commonly and so extensively used by a particular group, and that then it stuck with that group, and that group became now known as the Gyöpas. And which group is this? It's the group of disciples and grand disciples and great disciples of Gampopa. But an early term that was also used interchangeably is Drupgyu, which is the practice lineage. Yeah, Drup is to practice. So emphasizing that this is not, in calling it the Drupgyu, it's saying it is not a theoretical, it is not a lineage that emphasizes trying to harmonize all the different theories, trying to logically figure out why this sutra says this, why that commentary says that, why this commentary is different from that commentary, all of that. And so in this name, Drupgyu, practice lineage. Here, practice lineage, Drupgyu, is saying we don't take that approach. That's the approach of the Panditas, of the great scholars. Yes, we respect that approach, but in our approach, we don't do that. We are the practice lineage, Drupgyu. So here in the genuine tradition of the practice lineage, where the two rivers of Kadampa and Mahamudra are mixed into one. So now more specific. Now it's actually referring to Gampopa now. Because Gampopa was first and foremost a Kadampa monk. And received many Kadampa teachings, and the Kadampa lineage comes from Atisha. Ka, same ka, Dampa, Kadam. Kadam. Then he went and trained with Milarepa. Then that's the Mahamudra. Atisha also had Mahamudra teachings, So Gampopa also received Mahamudra teachings from Atisha, because Atisha himself was a disciple of Naropa, which Marpa, who brought Naropa's teachings, and others, not just Naropa, Marpa the Tibetan, right, who was Milarepa's teacher, was also a disciple of Naropa. But Atisha, I believe, was a older disciple of Naropa, whom Marpa met maybe once when Marpa was on his way to India. Atisha was on his way to Tibet. In fact, Atisha told Marpa, no need to go, you come with me. I need a translator. Marpa said, no, I want to go. And then Atisha said, okay, well, I'm not going to insist, but I need a translator. And so they met. So Atisha was like a more senior student of Naropa. So basically, even Atisha, he had Mahamudra lineage from Naropa. Atisha also had Mahamudra lineage from Maitripa. And Marpa also. Marpa's two main teachers, actually. Often we say Naropa, but Marpa really, you could say, had two main teachers. One was Naropa, one was Maitripa. Maitripa was younger than Naropa, of these two teachers. So Marpa also studied with Maitripa, just as Atisha studied with both. So anyway, here it says, here in the genuine tradition of the practice lineage, where the two rivers of Kadampa and Mahamudra are mixed into one, if one realizes some portion of emptiness, so this is what I mean by, I think Khenpo Kunpal is qualifying this statement a little bit, but qualifying this statement in a way that I think Kyobpa wasn't qualifying. So the qualifier here is if one realizes some portion of emptiness. which is the great equality of emptiness and dependent origination. Then, to that extent, one will treat it as, and it arises only as, one will treat it as subtlety regarding the respective adoption and abandonment of virtue and non-virtue, cause and result. Do you see what I mean here? I know it's hard. This translation is hard, and probably the original Tibetan is a little hard. Here he seems, you know, although I cannot say exactly he's saying this because I don't know the original Tibetan, but based on this translation here, he seems to be saying, this statement is saying, for those who only see some portion, that means not the full aspect, not the full extent of the realization of emptiness, then these people, they need to treat emptiness as arising as cause and result. Does this make sense? Can you understand what he seems to be saying? Go ahead, Judy.
Is he saying just some realization and not the full realization?
Yes.
That's the point here.
Yeah, he wants to. He seems to want to say that this statement is geared towards those who have not gone all the way.
On the path, but not there.
Yeah. And therefore, for those who have not gone all the way, it is important to see that cause and effect is still very important.
It really is hedging. I mean, it's dancing around the
kind of like the strength of that statement, you know, how forceful that statement is. It's like toning it down. At least according to what we're seeing here. Again, let's read more carefully, right? If one realizes some portion, see here's the thing, some portion of emptiness, that means not the full share of emptiness. Which is the great equality of emptiness and dependent origination. Then to that extent, see, furthermore, to that extent, you will treat it as cause and result. You should treat it as cause and result. And then, thus one will not despise cause and result. Also, kind of interesting expression, you know, despise cause and result, you know. It makes you wonder, like, who despises cause and result?
It also sounds like he's saying that when he's saying to that extent, he's all seems to be saying that if you have the full realization, it's not that important.
Exactly. Yeah. That if you have the full realization, not just some portion, but the whole share, then The full extent is the statement, you know, is not so important. Seems like, you know, again, the translation is a little hard here, right? But based on what we can see, if one realizes some portion of emptiness, then this qualifier, which is the great equality of emptiness and dependent origination, right? I also have a question about this, which is this qualifying some portion of emptiness, or is this qualifying emptiness itself? Unclear. Seems like it's saying it's qualifying some portion of emptiness. Yeah? Meaning, if you have only realized some portion of emptiness, then you are at the level where you experience the great equality of emptiness and dependent origination. Right? Then, to that extent, one will treat it, what is it? Emptiness, as subtlety regarding the respective adoption and abandonment of virtue and non-virtue, cause and result. Thus one will not despise cause and effect. Yeah, this expression, thus one will not despise cause and effect, I think calls attention to a broader issue. And here is, I would say, where I feel, or I feel that, you know, for me at least, why, you know, the way Kyobpa Rinpoche expresses the fundamental position of Kyobpa Rinpoche makes a lot of sense to me. I see it as very profound. You know, of course, it's all just me. I'm cognizant of that. Is that overall, in the bigger picture, I think in the Buddhist tradition, and I can say I have been exposed to both my professional PhD training and my own interest, even in graduate school. I dare say this sounds like I'm boasting. At least when I was in graduate school, among my peers, nobody knows as much across Buddhist traditions, including my teachers there. Of course, each of them knew a lot about their specialty, way more than I knew. But I always have interest across Buddhist traditions. So I dare say that that is one of my strengths, maybe also one of my problems. But if you look across the Buddhist tradition, there is this uncomfortable relationship, a tension between Buddhahood as having transcended everything, right? Buddhahood, the final goal, is the transcendence of everything that we know. On the one hand. On the other hand, what to do with this relative reality? That this tension is one that is present and not easily resolved, and that each Buddhist tradition finds a way to balance these two. But in finding a way to balance these two, these two like ends of the tension, tend to lean one way or the other way, while always saying, we're the middle way, we're the middle way, we're the middle way. You know, all things being equal, all things being middle, you still end up leaning one way or the other way. Because I think necessarily in the realm of words, in the realm of using words, there is no true middle. Once words are involved, at the end of the day, you try your best to be middle, you still lean one way or the other way. No matter how subtle, you are still leaning one way or the other way. Yeah? Once you enter the realm of words. So then I can accept that on the level of realization, right? Kyobpa Rinpoche's realization, Milarepa's realization, Sakya Pandita's realization, Longchenpa's realization across the Buddhist, Tibetan Buddhist tradition, and then beyond the Tibetan Buddhist, and Dogen's realization, Buddha Ghosha's realization, so on and so forth, I can accept that on the level of realization, maybe they are equally as realized as each other. I can accept that. But on the level of how they teach and they instruct, now we have entered the realm of words. And when it enters the realm of words, even though all of them understand, we teach the middle way, we should teach the middle way free from the two extremes, meaning transcending the extremes. But once you enter the realm of words, no matter how hard you try, you have to lean one way or the other. In this case, Kyobpa Rinpoche is leaning in the direction of paying attention to the problem at hand, which is this relative world. So for him, when emptiness is realized, like fully, not some portion, full extent. When emptiness is realized full extent, there's absolutely no contradiction, he says, between emptiness and cause and result. So from his biography, it shows his own kind of evolution. As he spent 2 years with Pamodrupa, more or less, before Pamodrupa passed away. It said that the first year he spent with Pamodrupa, he thought he had already realized the full extent of realization. And so he was very confident, perhaps proud. We see that, in his biography, in his earliest biography, again compiled by Sherab Jungne. It's very honest, It says that Kyobpa, was very confident of himself, to the point of being arrogant. When he arrived, at his teacher's place, he had heard so much about how great his teacher is, and therefore how great all his teacher's disciples. But when he arrived there, he looked around, he said, huh? Just like this? And worse, not just that he thought the disciples were not so impressive, then he thought, gosh, maybe the teacher is also not that impressive. So he was pretty, arrogant. So it says the first year, he through Pamodrupa's guidance, he already had a lot of training, from his uncle, from his teacher, from other teachers. He was already doing Vajra Yogini practice, this, that, Chakasamvara, Vajakilaya. His father was a great Yamantaka practitioner. His uncle was a great Vajakilaya practitioner. Then he studied Vajavarahi with someone and Mahamudra. He was already very trained. But finally, when he met Pamodrupa, Pamodrupa gave him the instructions, and then the first year, it said that he realized this realization of emptiness, and he thought, he realized all phenomena to be empty, and he understood that at the time of death, I will become a Buddha. All concerns have been cast aside now. I'm done. I will not come back. And in the bardo, I'm going to manifest full Buddhahood. And then, moreover, so this is a quote, moreover, even though now, while still alive, the concepts of cause, karma, and afflictions, concepts, the ideas, the concepts about these things will still arise, but they have no power over me anymore. And they are like hemp rope burned by fire. Nothing remains. It has its form. Like hemp, the example here, hemp rope burned by fire, it still has its form as it is not destroyed, but its structure can no longer bind. And like, I don't know what that, I've never seen a hemp rope burnt, but have you seen like printed paper burned? Like with words, right? After you burn, you can still see those words, some of the printing they have these days. But if you try to lift up the page, it will crumble. Same meaning here. So Kyobpa Rinpoche says, at the end of the first year, he thought, now all that needs to happen is I finish this life, then when I enter the bardo, I will become fully awake as Buddha. But then, Pamodrupa said to him, not yet. It's good you have this realization of the emptiness of all phenomena, yes, but not yet. During the second year, he understood that such a realization is not the ultimate one. In that year, it said, so first year he heard Pamodrupa teach on emptiness, nature of the mind, all of that, Then in the second year he was with Pamodrupa, Pamodrupa gave many teachings on the Jataka tales, the stories of the past lives of the Buddha, and gave many teachings on Buddha nature. Then it said that Jigten Sumgon suddenly in the second year, hearing his Lama tell all these stories about the Jatakas, about the past lives of the Buddhas, and most of these stories are about cause and effect. Then Jigten Sumgon thought, oh, my Lama is actually doing this for me. Because then he understood, he felt that he was the only one who had understood that cause and result exist within emptiness, that this has an impact on how the realized person should behave, and that to follow such a conduct after realizing emptiness is an act of compassion. One result of such a realization was that he abandoned his status, his lay status, and took full ordination. Now, this actually did not happen until a few more years down the road. But that realization that occurred during the second year. Yeah. So, in the second year of his training with Pamodrupa, Pamodrupa started to emphasize on the Jataka tales. Very interesting. These days, we think Jataka tales are like fairy tales, that you tell kids. If you look Jataka tales for books, by Wisdom Publication, Shambhala Publications, they are all children's books. We say, no, the Jataka tales, they are the profound wisdom of Buddhas. Emptiness, you can more or less understand, because it's logical. It's based on yes and no. You can logically deduce, at least the intellectual understanding. But the intellectual understanding of cause and effect can be very hard. Not easy. If you do this, this will happen. If you do that, that will happen. And sometimes we look at this and we even think, this sounds like some weird fairy tales. And so then we turn them into kids' books, you know. The Jataka tales, you have a talking rabbit with a talking crocodile, you know. Then the minute we hear, you know, the crocodile is speaking, you know, Sanskrit with the rabbit, then we think, it's fairy tales. Yeah, I'm not saying, you know, like literally the crocodile was speaking Sanskrit and the rabbit could speak back Sanskrit to the crocodile. But something else is taught there about the subtle inner workings of cause and effect. And who has that kind of wisdom to see that, to be able to see that, and to be able to clarify that for us? Only Buddhists. And so when emptiness is realized, that emptiness now arises as cause and effect. In fact, some portion of realizing emptiness arises as emptiness. Oh, everything is empty. Everything is, you know, space. Yes, yes. That's some portion of realization of emptiness. You feel very free, very relaxed. Work is done. But someone comes to you and say, you know, why did I experience this? Or why did this happen to me? Right? And this some portion of realizing emptiness is like, I don't know. But everything is empty. That's the best, you know, one could say. But a more profound understanding of emptiness would allow this person to say, you know why? Let me tell you. Exactly why you're experiencing this right now is due to this, that. And more importantly, knowing how to give this person helpful pointers for them to get out of suffering. So when the full extent of emptiness is experienced, realized, like Buddha Shakyamuni under the Bodhi tree, then what did Buddha Shakyamuni teach? Cause and effect. The Four Noble Truths is the cause and effect. It's about cause and effect. First two Noble Truths, right? Suffering and the cause of suffering. What is that? Second Noble Truth is cause. First Noble Truth is effect. Due to the cause of suffering, suffering exists. Third and fourth Noble Truth, what is it? Is cause and result. What is it? The path to the end of suffering and the end of suffering. The end of suffering is the result. The path, the third Noble Truth is the end of suffering. The fourth Noble Truth is the path. Again, cause and result. First, Buddha describes, the result. Here is how, here is where, here is the result. What is the cause? So, both the cause and result of suffering, first Noble Truth, and the cause and result of happiness, the happiness that is beyond temporary happiness. Both the cause and result of both happiness, of suffering, and genuine happiness is what the Four Noble Truths is. This is what the Buddha taught. So lots more for 17. We will continue to look at 417. Maybe read the rest of Khenpo Kunpal's commentary. The rest of Khenpo Kunpal's commentary is different quotes from different masters. Then we will look at Dharmakirti, Chodra's commentary. Then beyond Chodra's commentary, again, Professor Zobich's notes for Statement 17. If you have the big book, homework might be to reread that section. Then when I talk about it, if I get confused, you can help correct me. Or at least if I'm confused, you have read it, so then you won't get confused. So 617. Sublime, precious, venerable, and glorious root and lineage gurus, assembly of Idam deities, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas dwelling in the 10 directions, and all assemblies of Viras, Viranis, Yoginis, and Dakinis. Please heed me. May the virtues collected in the 3 times by me and the entirety of samsara and nirvana and the inherent root of virtue not result in the 8 worldly dharmas, the 4 causes of samsara, and the resultant states of hearers and solitary realizers, and may all mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, particularly those enemies who hate us, obstruct us, who harm, and those who create obstacles, maras who mislead, and their Mara retinues have happiness and be separated from suffering and quickly attain the unsurpassed and precious Bodhi. By the power of this vast root of virtue, may we benefit sentient beings with body, speech, and mind. May the afflictive thoughts of attachment, aversion, ignorance, pride, and jealousy not arise in my mind stream. May thoughts of name, fame, gain, respect, and so forth strive not arise for even a moment. With my mind stream moistened by love, compassion, and bodhicitta, may I come under the care of virtuous spiritual friends, and having become as space, may I achieve the supreme attainment of Mahamudra in this very life by the virtues collected in the 3 times by me and the entirety of samsara and nirvana, and by the innate root of virtue, may I and all sentient beings quickly attain the unsurpassed, perfect, complete, precious Bodhi. Okay. Ta-ta.